In 1925, the United States government published a finding that should have changed how Americans build their homes forever. The Department of Agriculture tested an ancient construction method used on every continent on Earth and released a stunning conclusion. Structures built this way endure indefinitely, and they can be built for less than 2/3 the cost of a standard frame house. Endure indefinitely. Their words, their study, filed away and buried. 13 years later, a company named Owens Corning patented a product called fiberglass insulation. They had a product to sell, but they needed the market to forget what the government had just documented. So they invented a test to help it forget. And right now, you are likely paying thousands of dollars a year to heat and cool a house because of what that test was specifically designed to hide. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. The archive opens 9,500 years ago in what is now south-central Turkey. Cambridge and Stanford archaeologists spent decades excavating a fully developed urban center of 8,000 people called Catalhoyuk. Residents entered through rooftop hatches and descended into homes with walls that were thick on purpose. Not because stone was scarce, not because labor was cheap, because the builders had learned, through generations of failure and refinement, that mass was the answer to an unforgiving climate. The exterior temperature in that region swung more than 40 degrees Fahrenheit between day and night. Inside those structures, that variation dropped to under 12 degrees. 40 degrees of swing outside, 12 inside. Earth and mass doing work no mechanical system had been invented to do 7,500 years before Christ. And the physics has not changed by a single variable since. Fast forward to 1238 AD. Construction begins on the Alhambra Palace in Granada, Spain. University of Granada researchers have conducted systematic interior monitoring across multiple years. The exterior swings from freezing in winter to 95 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Inside, it holds between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. 63 degrees of oscillation outside, 4 degrees inside. The architects who built it had no engineering degrees. They had something far more useful, tradition refined generation by generation, until the solution was optimized past the point a modern computer model could improve on. Your central air unit will need replacing in 15 years. That wall has not needed replacing in 800 years. This was not a secret held by one civilization. Every culture that built in a demanding climate arrived at the same answer: thick walls of earth, clay, and compressed soil that absorb heat during the day and release it after dark. The Pueblo builders of Chaco Canyon engineered it into canyon walls that held communities of thousands through brutal New Mexico winters and blazing summers. In Lyon, France in the 13th century, farmers called it pieds de terre and built entire neighborhoods from it that still stand. Sections of the Great Wall of China, built during the Warring States period in 475 BC, are made of compressed earth and remain intact today after 2,500 years of wind, freeze, and rain. From 1865 to 1941, farmhouses and civic buildings across the American Southwest and the Southeast were built with it. In Weilburg, Germany, a 7-story rammed earth building constructed in the 1800s is still occupied. In 1925, the USDA codified what all of them had known. Then the insulation industry stepped in. Here is the physics they needed to bury. Every building material has 2 thermal properties that define how it actually performs. The first is thermal resistance, how hard it is for heat to pass through. This is what the R value measures. Fiberglass batt insulation runs at roughly R 3.5 per inch. A rammed earth wall sits at approximately R 0.6 per inch. By R value alone, fiberglass beats a thick earthen wall by a factor of 6 to 1. That number is real. It is also the only number the industry wants you to know. The second property is specific heat capacity, how much thermal energy a material can store before its temperature actually changes. And here the comparison collapses entirely. A cubic foot of fiberglass weighs roughly half a pound. A cubic foot of rammed earth weighs 140 pounds. They have about the same heat capacity per pound. That makes 280 times the mass. An earthen wall stores 280 times the thermal energy of the fiberglass that beats it on the industry's favorite test. What that mass creates is thermal lag. A 12-inch adobe wall, hit by a direct sun at 2 in the afternoon, does not transmit that heat inside. The energy migrates through the mass inch by inch, degree by degree. By the time it travels through 12 inches of compressed earth, 8 to 10 hours have passed. The heat that baked the exterior at 2 in the afternoon reaches the interior around midnight. By that time, the outside air has already dropped 30 degrees, and the wall is radiating stored warmth back into the house. Push the wall to 20 inches, and the thermal lag stretches to 20 hours. The heat striking the exterior at noon does not arrive at the interior until the following morning, by which point the night has recharged the wall in the opposite direction. The daily temperature cycle never penetrates. It gets absorbed, delayed, and released entirely out of phase with the conditions that created it. Engineers call it the flywheel effect. A flywheel stores rotational energy when the engine runs fast and releases it when the engine slows. The thermal mass wall does the same with temperature. It does not block heat. It time shifts it. It converts a savage daily oscillation into something approaching a stable interior climate. Fiberglass does none of this. It cannot remember yesterday's temperature. It cannot store energy for tonight. It is a static, dead barrier in a world that never stops cycling. And if you are paying $200 a month to heat and cool a house wrapped in it, that wall is the reason. In 1938, Owens Corning patented fiberglass insulation and needed to build a market. To do that, they needed a metric that made insulation look like the only answer to thermal building performance. The R value was that answer. It measures resistance under constant, dead conditions, a laboratory where temperature never cycles and never swings. Under those artificial conditions, fiberglass wins every time. The test was designed to ignore the dynamic, time-shifting property of thermal mass. It was designed to miss that effect by the company that sold what the test rewarded. That metric entered the Federal Housing Administration minimum property standards during the 1950s. The FHA insured mortgages for the entire post-war housing boom. Any home that could not meet those standards could not receive a mortgage. If home buyers could not finance, builders would not build. The mortgage system became the enforcement mechanism for a thermal metric designed in a corporation's interest. Then came 1975. The oil crisis created a political mandate for national energy standards. The American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers published ASHRAE Standard 90, the first national building energy code in United States history. The technical committee that wrote it was composed primarily of insulation manufacturers and mechanical system engineers. No earthen construction representative was present. No adobe builder testified. The standard defined minimum thermal performance entirely in R-value terms. ASHRAE Standard 90 meant R-value. R-value meant insulation. And earthen construction was regulated out of existence. The consequences were specific. Arizona banned adobe construction outright for a 2-year period. A 10,000-year-old building material was made illegal because it could not pass a test invented by the industry selling its replacement. Pueblo communities across the Southwest, the builders of Chaco Canyon, the Tohono O'odham, the Hopi, found their traditional homes declared non-compliant by a standard written in a conference room by men who had never packed earth into a form. The building their grandparents had constructed from the ground they stood on, at almost no cost, with no supply chain, now required a licensed engineer's variance just to exist. An entire tradition of zero-cost construction, the same tradition the USDA had validated 50 years earlier, was effectively made the exclusive domain of those who could afford to fight the paperwork. Independent science told a different story. Oak Ridge National Laboratory tested earthen walls under real-world conditions, actual temperature cycles across actual seasons, not the steady-state laboratory setup that the R-value metric requires. A 12-inch rammed earth wall, assigned a standard rating of R13, delivered energy savings equivalent to a conventionally insulated wall rated R25. The metric had been undercounting the Earth's performance by nearly half. The Department of Energy published the results, and the building code did not change. In 2007, the Australian Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation compared rammed earth and timber frame construction under identical real-world conditions, finding a 70% reduction in heating energy. Interior daily temperature swing was 4 to 6 degrees in the earthen structures versus 20 to 25 in the timber frames. Same climate, same occupants. One wall storing energy, one letting it pass straight through. In 2018, the International Energy Agency reviewed more than 400 studies across dozens of climates and concluded high-mass buildings use 50 to 70% less energy than insulation-only equivalents. If your heating and cooling costs $3,000 a year, an earthen wall saves you $2,000 of it every year for the next 1,000 years. A revival is underway. New Mexico adopted the first earthen building materials code in the United States in the 1960s, revised and strengthened through 2021, now referenced internationally as the standard. Adobe builders organized in 1994 into the Earth Builders Guild, sat at every code committee table they could reach, and wrote the permission themselves. In California, David Easton of Rammed Earthworks has been building for 45 years. His walls achieve 3,000 psi compressive strength within the range of industrial concrete and have been installed in commercial buildings across the Bay Area. A rammed earth structure built in 1820 in Richmond, Tasmania, still operates today as a working bed and breakfast. The oldest material in construction is the one still standing when everything newer needs replacing. Here is your pathway in. It starts with the dirt. A local geotechnical lab, often reachable through a university agriculture or engineering department, can test the subsoil on your property for the right proportion of clay, silt, and sand. In most areas with native subsoil, the building material is already on your land, free. If you are in the American Southwest, New Mexico's Earthen Building Materials Code and Arizona's active builder community give you established permitting precedent. Outside the Southwest, a licensed engineer's stamp on your plans unlocks most local building departments. For financing, the workaround is a portfolio lender. These are small local banks that hold their own mortgages rather than selling to Fannie Mae, so they are not bound by federal appraisal requirements. A growing number of these lenders are financing earthen homes again. David Easton's book, The Rammed Earth House, and Paul McHenry's Adobe and Rammed Earth Buildings are the field's standard references. The Earth Builders Guild offers a 6-week online course that covers New Mexico code, soil testing, and construction basics. The metric was invented in 1938. The National Building Code was written in 1975 by the people selling the alternative. The mortgage system locked in what the code established. 3 interlocking systems, none of them designed to measure what actually matters, all of them profitable for the corporations that wrote them. But the material that predates every one of them, the material that built the Great Wall, the Alhambra, and Chaco Canyon, and that provided 9,500 years of human shelter, is under your feet right now. It always has been. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.